What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this, we have 4 Dutch habits I brought with me to America after living in the Netherlands for 1 year. Before we dive in, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to smash subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Also, if you like to support the channel by becoming a member, all you gotta do is hit that join button to receive your exclusive benefits. Let's get right to it.
In January 2024, I boarded a one-way flight from Dallas-Fort Worth to Amsterdam, and I proceeded to spend the next 14 months of my life living in the Netherlands. And when I recently returned, when I made that flight from Amsterdam back to Dallas-Fort Worth, when I went through the US Customs, they asked me one question, and that question was, did you bring anything back with you? And I told them, no, I didn't. But I lied. Okay, I lied. I lied to the US Customs. Now, before you deport me, President Trump or whoever is watching this, let me explain myself. I didn't bring back any physical items from the Netherlands, at least as far as I'm aware. But I did bring back these 4 Dutch habits, and in this video I want to share the 4 Dutch habits that I brought with me from the Netherlands to the US, the first of which being cycling. So as you can see in the background, I rode my bike here to this park. And look, I grew up coming to this park damn near every single day. Okay, almost every day throughout my adolescence I was here at this park, from the age of 16 all the way until I left the US.
Every day?
So that's what, 8 years. 8 years that I was coming to this park. I drove pretty much every single time.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to reveal my location or my parents' location, but I don't live that far away from this park. It's maybe a 5 to 7 minute bike ride at most.
I feel that.
At most. And that's before they installed these quote-unquote bike lanes on that path from where my parents live to this park. So it's not a very long ride at all, but I always drove, and I don't really know why I did that. I don't really know why I did that. I guess I was just lazy, but honestly, I mean, having to drive and stop at these red lights and deal with the traffic and other people who can't drive, I feel like that's a lot more mentally taxing than just getting on your bike and enjoying the weather. I mean, if the weather is good enough to come to the park, it's good enough to bike as well. But I have not driven a car to this park since I got back. And actually, I want to say I've only really driven about 5 times. I've been here for 3 weeks. I've only driven maybe 5 or 6 times at most. Whenever I got in the car for the first time, and my parents are letting me use their van, so shout out to them. But basically, the tank was at about 3/4 of a full tank. And right now, at least as of yesterday, I drove yesterday, or maybe the day before. Last time I was in the car, it was at about 1/4 of a tank. So I've used about half of a tank of gas, and that van doesn't really get very good gas mileage. So I have not been driving a whole lot at all.
He really done said, I done been to the Netherlands. I'm a transformed and a changed man. Forget the cars. I'm biking everywhere. And he's completely right. I used to live literally right next to a bowling alley where I would drive out of my parking lot and drive into the parking lot of the bowling alley when I went up there, when it was literally maybe 5 minute walk from my apartment building to walking inside of that bowling alley. Maybe 5 minutes. But it's just American mentality. That's it. It's an American mentality. When I went to college, I didn't have a car for the first year. Had no problem walking to each class, got around just fine. Got a car my second year, then walked to another class. Drove to every class. It's the mentality.
At all. With my old driving habits, I'd probably have to fill that van up every single week. But now, at least while I'm here in the DFW area with my girlfriend, we're cycling as much as possible. And look, cycling here isn't the most pleasant experience by any means, but what I've come to realize is that somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
If nothing changes, then nothing changes. So somebody has to set that precedent to show that, hey, there is a demand for this. Because you never know who might be watching. Maybe an urban planner in this city might see me on the bike and say, hey, there is a demand for this, and they can implement policy accordingly. Or maybe I'm just being a bit too idealistic. All I know is that
probably for the
personally,
US.
I made a commitment to myself that I am going to sustain that cycling habit no matter where I go. And if I can't sustain that cycling habit, or at the very least walking, or just not needing to rely on a car, if I'm in a place where I literally have no other mode of transportation other than driving, I will simply not stay in that place. I simply
Respect.
will not stay in that place. Now,
Absolute
again,
respect.
the DFW area is not only bad for cyclists, but
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say that it's pretty hostile. It's pretty hostile because
Yeah.
really people here, again, their mentalities are not really aligned with that being a
Mm-mm.
mode of transportation, a viable mode of transportation for adults. But again, I'm hoping that in the time that I'm here, I can at least begin to facilitate some sort of change in people's subconscious minds that that is
I hope
actually
you
a
can.
viable form of transportation. Maybe I'm being idealistic, but what else can I do? Now, the next Dutch habit that I brought back to the US with me after living in the
I
Netherlands
feel
for
like it
14.
is going to be very difficult. Yeah, I think it's idealistic for the U.S. I don't think that it will ever turn into a country that's more so gives more inclusion for bikes, for cyclists and walkers. I think it'll always be a country that's very dependent on cars. I think at this point, um, all those big car manufacturers and companies and everything put enough money into the pockets of the right people where, yeah, they're not going to give more to the cyclists and walkers. No. If anything, they're going to do less for them and do more for cars.
18 months is speaking Dutch. Now, to be completely honest with you, ik spreek een klein beetje Nederlands. Een klein beetje. And look, it's kind of embarrassing to say that I was there for 14 months and I was surrounded by it and I can't even really hold a conversation.
Mm.
And that feeling of embarrassment is kind of fueling me to double down on learning Dutch, ironically,
Okay.
now that I'm not in the
Okay.
Netherlands
I
anymore. And I also
respect it.
feel this pressure to sustain and maintain what I've already learned. Now, this is exceedingly difficult because, of course, people here do not speak Dutch.
No.
People here don't speak Dutch. If I go up to somebody and I say, spreek je Nederlands, they are not going to know what I'm
No
talking
idea.
about at
No
all.
idea.
People
No
here don't
idea.
speak Dutch. Most people here probably can't even point out the Netherlands on a map. And if they can,
I
all they know
can
about the
now,
Netherlands
but
is Amsterdam.
I couldn't
Oh, what
before.
part of Amsterdam did you go to? Oh, actually, I was in Brabant and
Rotterdam.
Gelderland for a month. Where? They
Yeah.
don't know what I'm talking about. They
Yeah.
don't know anything about the Netherlands other than, again, Amsterdam. So it's very difficult to practice my conversational skills in Dutch, but luckily I have a girlfriend who is born and raised in the Netherlands
There you
and
go.
speaks fluent Dutch and English. So every once in a while, at least once a day, I would say, I try to sort of say something to her in Dutch and just have a little mini conversation just to build up my conversational skills
I feel
piece
that.
by piece. Obviously, that's not the most efficient way to go about it. I should probably invest in full on Dutch lessons. And if we do return to the Netherlands, then that is something that I will definitely explore doing. Or maybe I'll try to partner with a company that can provide some sort of Dutch coaching service or something like that. I don't know.
There you
I'm gonna
go.
figure out a way. But we've also been listening to a lot of Dutch music.
Mm.
Okay, these are some of the songs that I've been listening to. You can see them on the screen right now. If you know any more songs that have this kind of vibe, by the way, please
Dutch
put me on
R&B
in the
songs
comments.
that
If you know
talk
any
about
more Dutch
love,
songs that
anger, or
have this kind
heartbreak.
of vibe, then put me on game in the comments because I would love to add to this playlist. But also, we've been watching Dutch shows. We just got finished watching this show called, I don't even know the Dutch name, but the translation is Roosters. So I don't know. If you're Dutch, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but it is on Netflix,
Is it good?
and it was one of the few Dutch shows that actually had English subtitles. That's a big constraint that I ran into with learning Dutch was that when I went on Netflix or Videoland to watch Dutch shows, very few of them had English
Mm.
subtitles, which again made it very difficult to actually learn Dutch. So what I ended up doing instead was watching English
English
shows
with
with Dutch
Dutch.
subtitles. And I think it did help a little bit in terms of my ability to just translate in my head, but I am definitely doing what I can to, at the very least, sustain what I've already built in terms
I love
of
that.
learning Dutch. And the biggest thing for me in that process is actually speaking it. Now, Another
I feel
like
like that's absolutely respectable in the terms of he said he was going to do it, and so he's going to he's made that commitment to himself, and he's not going to backpedal on that commitment. He's going to give everything he's got to try and learn the Dutch language. And lucky for him, has a Dutch woman, and so can have those conversations. And if you ever go back to the Netherlands, can immerse yourself in some Dutch lessons, and maybe you talk in Dutch more rather than trying to conversate in English, and try to do every little thing you can to learn Dutch, which is pretty cool.
language that Dutch people know, and this is something that I think very few people know about, but Dutch people don't just speak Dutch and English, they also speak this hidden language, and that
A
language is
hidden
known as complaining. Yes, okay, if you're Dutch, before you dislike the video,
complaining.
tell me that I'm lying. Tell me that I'm lying. Dutch
That was
people love to
good.
complain, and it's for a good reason. You see, it's that complaining that prevents complacency, and that is, in my opinion, a big part of the reason why the Netherlands is so far ahead in terms of quality of life, is because Dutch people don't normalize things that have no business being normalized. For
Okay.
example, car dependency. There was a point when the Netherlands was trending toward car dependency. I want to say in the 50s, 60s, 70s, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but after children started getting killed in vehicular accidents, as pedestrians that is, Dutch people started to complain, and they
Yeah.
did this in the form of protests. And because of that, urban planners took the cue, they read the room, and they implemented infrastructure that wasn't necessarily aligned with car dependency. And now in the Netherlands, you can get by without having a car. That is a habit that I have brought back with me. If you haven't been watching my videos recently, I have been complaining nonstop about different aspects of the US. And look, a big part of this is me just utilizing my right to free speech, but
Yeah.
it's also for the sake of actually making the country a better place. Because at the end of the day, whether I'm living in Europe, Asia, Africa, or wherever else, America is still my home. It
I
is
feel
still
that.
my home. This is still where I was born and raised. And I want to see it become better
I
because
feel
I know
that.
that it has the potential to become better. But at the same time, nothing's going to change if nothing changes. So somebody has to talk about the
True.
issues that are present in America. And while there are plenty of people already doing that, I'm adding my voice into that conversation because I see some very specific issues that if the US just solved, if the US could just solve the urban planning issue, the quality of life would improve literally tenfold.
Yeah.
Literally tenfold. So, best believe that I am going to keep complaining. I'm going to keep being negative. I'm going to keep being not even cynical, but skeptical. I'm going to keep being
Oh,
skeptical
love that.
because if you're skeptical, if a nation, if a society is skeptical, then that will enable that society to have an optimistic outlook on the future. Because once you
Mm.
acknowledge the problems, you can begin to start searching for solutions.
Yeah.
And that is what I want to help happen here in the US. Again, maybe I'm being overly idealistic. I don't know. I just know that I can't stand by and just watch this happen and not actually do anything.
Yeah.
Now, the next
I feel
Dutch habit.
he's right in terms of nothing's gonna change, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. And although it may be idealistic, I feel like somebody's got to stand up and do something and talk about these problems and try. Like to just give up completely isn't the right thing to do. So for him to come out, speak out, and try to make things better, I absolutely respect that. I absolutely respect that, and I think that's really dope.
that I brought with me to the US after living in the Netherlands for 14 months is frugality. I have become
I love that.
extremely frugal. You heard me mention earlier in the video that if I were to sustain my old driving habits here in the US while driving this van, I would probably have to fill up every single week. And listen, I'm gonna be honest with you, okay? I make pretty good money from YouTube. I
Mhm.
make some pretty good money from YouTube. Obviously, it fluctuates, but I make enough to where I don't need to think about gassing up that van every week or
I
every
feel
day
you.
if it came down to it. It's not really that big of a deal, but I also don't like to just blow my money. Now, part of this is because of my experiences when I was younger. I was
Hmm.
making good money from YouTube, and I pretty much blew all of it
Oh wow.
on a nice car, a nice apartment, designer clothes, jewelry, just a lot of dumb, frivolous things. But a lot of it is also because having lived in the Netherlands, I realized that the correlation between consumerism and quality of life is a lot weaker than Americans like to believe. A lot of people here like to buy things in order to distract themselves from the fact that this country is actually not as good as they think it is.
Mm.
And that's kind of a different discussion for a different day.
Mm.
But the
You
point that I'm
talking
making
now?
is that I don't need to purchase things in order to feel better about myself and my life anymore.
I
And
understand that.
honestly, I have to give credit where credit is due. Dutch people helped me see the light in that regard. And if I'm being honest, for a good portion of my time in the Netherlands, I still sustained my materialistic ways. I was
Mm.
still thinking in terms of how I can work harder so I can get a nicer car
I
and
feel
things of that
that.
nature.
I feel
But
that.
over time, especially in my last month in the Netherlands, being in Fasten, being in a very small town where the way of living was much simpler, I realized that happiness doesn't really come from things. It comes from experiences. And for me personally, it comes from peace of mind. Being able to wake up every day and feed the chickens. Feed the chickens that would walk into the backyard of the Airbnb. That was something that I could look forward to every single day.
Absolutely.
And I'm starting to realize as I mature that that is what I need to center my life around. I need to make that my main focal point. Just having those experiences, those interactions. And of course, this aligns with the Dutch way of thinking, and really, by and large, the European way of thinking, which is that consumerism and materialism are not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, to be completely fair and transparent with you, again, I just mentioned that I'm making pretty good money with YouTube right now. And that's not by coincidence. It's because I'm out here posting almost every single day.
I feel
And
that.
I'm
I
saying this to
feel
say that
that.
I do still sort of have the American mentality of making money. So I do
Mm.
want to make money,
Yeah.
but I also want to keep money. So
Oh.
I feel like that's a really good combination to have where you're seeking out more money and it's not coming at the expense of your ethical or moral boundaries. You're just making money doing something that you would probably do for free. Me talking to you is just like me talking to a friend. I'm having these same conversations for free pretty much every time I see people, but also being able to keep the money that I'm making so that I can further invest in more experiences that can help me elevate myself and broaden my horizons so that I can have even more meaningful and much deeper conversations with you about these sorts of things.
I feel like that was definitely a great video. In explaining the habits that he brought back to America. And I completely that frugality. I have that. I didn't need to go to the Netherlands. I got that from growing up in a household where I saw my dad being frugal. You had to. He was raising 6 children, so he didn't have a choice. Had to make money stretch, and I just grew up with the kind of mindset of just always wanting more money because I never wanted to be worried about if anything happened, like going broke, living check to check, stressing about like if a tire went flat, I can't go and get a tire, like things like that, or like things that I feel like I get scared of still. And so money that does come in, I try to say like if I got extra money, I'll probably save like 75% of it, and then like 25% I'll say, you know what, spend a little bit, spend have a little fun, but 75% immediately goes into savings because you never know what's going to happen. And my dad always raised me saying, it's not when something happens, or it's not if something happens, it's when it happens because it's going to happen. And I like to have it there for those moments. That's all we've got. If you guys enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe, get a bit of thumbs up, check out the next. I'll see y'all next time.